I never thought I'd live long enough to be thrown out like trash by my own child. The blow wasn't what hurt the most. It was the look in Jason's eyes, cold, hollow, like I was nothing more than a burden he was finally rid of. My name is Margaret Maggie Lanes. I'm 73 years old, a retired school librarian, and up until 2 months ago, I thought I had a home. A real home with family, warmth, the kind of laughter that echoes off the kitchen walls and lingers even after the lights go out. But I was wrong. God help me, I was so wrong. It started small. Whispered arguments between Jason and Rachel, my daughter-in-law. Doors closing just a little too hard. A growing distance in Jason's voice whenever he spoke to Minute, the loving mom I used to hear, but a curt Maggie, like I was a tenant, not his mother. After my husband, Harold, passed 3 years ago, Jason had insisted I move in. You shouldn't be alone, Mom, he'd said. Come live with us. We've got space, and it'll be good for the kids to be close to their grandma. I believed him. Maybe he even believed it at the time. But things change when money gets tight. And people, they change faster. Rachel never liked me much. We were different women. She was all manicured nails and career ambition, always rushing, always exhausted, and I was. Well, I suppose I was a reminder of what she didn't want to become, older, slower, in the way. But I tried. I stayed out of her space, did what I could around the house: laundry, dishes, picking the kids up from school. I even offered to help pay for groceries with what little I got from Harold's pension. I thought I was being helpful. Instead, I became a line item in their budget. One morning, Rachel came home from work, slamming her briefcase down. Jason followed, shoulders tense. She's still here, Rachel hissed, her eyes darting to where I stood near the hallway, folding a towel. Jason didn't answer. I knew then I had overheard enough that week to know something was brewing. And it wasn't good. 2 days later, the confrontation happened. I was sitting at the kitchen table, a cup of tea cooling in front of me, listening to the rain tap gently against the window panes. Jason and Rachel stood across from me like prosecutors. Rachel's voice was clipped. We've been reviewing expenses. This house isn't cheap, and frankly, we need help. It's only fair you start contributing rent $200 a month. My mouth fell open. Two don't have that kind of money. Rachel, Jason, I'm on a fixed income. Rachel crossed her arms. Then maybe this isn't the place for you. I turned to Jason, pleading. Jay, you said I could stay. You said. His eyes didn't meet mine. Things are different now, Mom. That night, I wept silently in my room, careful not to make a sound. My youngest grandson, Caleb, had poked his head in just hours earlier with a picture he drew of the two of us in the garden. Don't cry, Grandma, he had whispered when he saw my wet eyes. I kissed his head. I'm not, sweetheart. Just a bit tired. But tired didn't cover it. I was breaking. The next week was a blur of discomfort. Rachel made a point of slamming cabinets, huffing whenever I was nearby, leaving passive-aggressive notes on the fridge. Don't forget to turn off the lights. Electricity isn't free. Please clean up after yourself. This isn't a hotel. Jason avoided me. My son, me sweet, thoughtful Jason, who once ran barefoot through thunderstorms to bring me my umbrella, now wouldn't even sit with me for dinner. I began packing my things. I had no plan. No relatives nearby. No savings to rent even the smallest room in this town. But I couldn't stay where I wasn't wanted. On the day it happened, I was carrying a box of my books down the stairs. Rachel was in the living room, talking loudly on the phone. Jason sat on the couch, scrolling through his phone. I hesitated. Jay, could you help me carry this down? He didn't look up. Busy. Rachel snapped. She's still here? I thought we told you pay rent or get out. I froze. Something inside me cracked. You don't need to scream, Rachel. I'm leaving. I just need. And then Jason stood. He strode over, face red, and shoved the box out of my arms. You never listen, he yelled. You just make everything harder. Books tumbled to the floor, and as I bent instinctively to pick them up, he swung his arm, not a punch. Not quite. More like an angry swipe. His palm connected with the side of my head. I lost my footing. My skull struck the corner of the bookshelf. Blood. A hot stream down my cheek. A sharp ringing in my ears. And then nothing. When I came to, I was in a hospital bed. The antiseptic air burned my nose. A nurse gently dabbed at my forehead. What? What happened? I croaked. You fell, she said softly. You hit your head. You're lucky it wasn't worse. Jason wasn't there. Rachel wasn't there. No family. No visitors. Only an officer standing by the door, arms crossed. "Ma'am," he said, "we need to ask you a few questions about how you were injured." I said nothing. Not because I didn't want Tobit, because I couldn't believe it. My son hit me. And now, what? I return to that house and pretend nothing happened? Or do I disappear, vanish into a world of senior shelters and forgotten names? The officer lowered his voice. "You have rights, ma'am. If something happened at home, if someone hurt you, we can help." I looked at him, then past him, to the small window where the sun was beginning to rise. Maybe it was time to stop protecting those who would never protect me. Maybe it was time to start over, even if I was 73 and bleeding. I didn't press charges. Not that day. The officer had offered options: a shelter, a social worker, even a restraining order. But the weight of humiliation held me down like a stone in deep water. I wasn't ready to say the words aloud. My son hit me. How do you speak such betrayal into existence? So I lied. I said I tripped, that it was my fault, clumsy old me. The nurse looked at me skeptically. The officer jotted something in his notebook and left. I stayed in the hospital for 2 nights. No one came. No Rachel. No Jason. Not even the kids. On the 3rd morning, the hospital's social worker visited me. Her name was Angela Young, bright eyes, dressed neatly in a navy cardigan, with the calm voice of someone trained to step softly into others' tragedies. "Mrs. Lanes," she said gently, "do you have someone to take you home?" Home. The word made me flinch. I shook my head slowly. "I don't think I have a home anymore." Angela hesitated, then sat across from me, her tablet in hand. "There are transitional programs. We can help find a temporary assisted living situation for you. Nothing permanent right away, but a safe place. You don't need to go back to that house." A safe place. It sounded like heaven. But I hesitated. "I have nowhere else," I whispered. "My son. He used to be good. He used to care." She didn't respond to that. Instead, she touched my hand gently. "Let us care now." I cried then. Not just tears, but the whole thing. The trembling, the gasping, the kind of release you only have when you finally admit the truth. And I said it. "He hit me." Angela nodded, not in surprise, but in the way someone does when they've heard the same heartbreak too many times. That evening, I was transferred to a women's transitional residence just outside town. It was an old converted rectory, clean, warm, nothing fancy, but it felt more like home than the house I'd been exiled from. The women there were all different ages, but most were older like me. Widows, abandoned wives, some escaping abusive children. I wasn't unique. That both hurt and helped. My roommate, Eleanor, was 78 and sharp-tongued. She'd been a nurse in another life, and now spent her mornings yelling at TV court shows and knitting scarves no one asked for. She took one look at me and said, "You're not broken. You're just bruised. There's a difference." And just like that, I began to heal. Every morning, we had group meals. Simple food: eggs, toast, oatmeal, but there was something sacred in sitting with other women who knew what it was to be forgotten. I didn't talk about Jason much. I didn't want to. But one night, over tea, Eleanor told me her story. My daughter told me I was suffocating her, that my love was too much. So she dropped me off at a senior center like I was an old chair. Haven't seen her since. She chuckled bitterly. "People think abandonment only comes from strangers. But honey, family can cut deeper than anyone." I reached across the table and held her hand. In that moment, we weren't just 2 discarded women, we were survivors. Weeks passed, then a month. I started volunteering at the local library 3 days a week. It wasn't paid, but the joy I felt helping children pick out books, seeing their eyes light up when I read aloud, that was payment enough. I wore bright cardigans again, painted my lips a soft pink, bought a new pair of shoes with the allowance Angela helped me apply for. Little by little, I became me again. One Saturday afternoon, I was shelving books when I heard a soft voice behind me. "Grandma." I froze. Turning slowly, I saw Calami's sweet grandson standing near the picture book aisle, clutching his little backpack. Behind him was a woman I didn't know. She wore scrubs and had a badge that read Camila Home Health Aide. I crouched, tears already burning. "Caleb," I whispered. He threw his arms around me, burying his face in my neck. He smelled like crayons and shampoo and childhood. "I missed you," he sniffled. I pulled back gently. "Where's your dad?" He looked down. "He said you moved because you didn't like us anymore." My heart cracked open. I looked up at the woman. She spoke softly. I help watch Caleb after school. His mom works late. He kept saying he wanted to visit the library you used to take him to. I nodded, trying to hold myself together. Would it be all right if I brought him once a week? She asked. Just for an hour? If you're okay with it? My throat tightened. Yes, please. I'd like that very much. After they left, I sat behind the checkout desk and cried. Not out of pain, but because, somehow, I had been given a second chance, if not with my son, then at least with a piece of him. 3 days later, I received a letter. No return address, but the handwriting was Jason's. Mom, I don't know what to say. I know what I did. I remember it all. I've been trying to sleep, but I keep seeing your face, blood, fear, disappointment. I failed you. Rachel moved out last week. She took the kids. Said she couldn't stay with someone capable of what I did. I've been going to anger management. I want to believe I can be better. Not for you. Not even for the kids. For me. If you never forgive me, I understand. But I hope you're safe. Love. Jason. I read the letter 3 times. Part of me wanted to rip it in half. Another part wanted to hold it to my chest and sob. Instead, I placed it in my Bible. Maybe forgiveness wasn't about letting someone back in. Maybe it was about letting myself move on. That evening, I told Eleanor, I think I'm going to apply for a little apartment downtown. There's a senior building near the park. She grinned. Hot damn. Finally. And just like that, the next chapter began. Over the next few weeks, I worked with Angela to complete my application for the senior housing unit near Marigold Park. It was nothing extravagant, just a cozy 1-bedroom apartment with a kitchenette and a balcony overlooking a community garden, but to me, it felt like a castle. I moved in with 2 suitcases, a few keepsake photos, and the books Jason hadn't thrown into a box. I brought my teacups, a handmade quilt from Harold's mother, and the last letter Jason had sent. I didn't bring shame. I didn't bring the weight of that house. For the first time in months, I slept peacefully. My days found rhythm. Mornings were for walks through the neighborhood, where I learned the names of every flower and every pigeon. Afternoons were for the library. Evenings, I'd sit on my balcony with tea, listening to the breeze and the quiet rustling of life below. Sometimes, I'd hear the laughter of children in the park. One evening, I saw Caleb again. He was with Camila, running to the swings. He spotted me and waved like nothing had changed. It made me ache and it made me hopeful. Later that week, a knock came at my door. It was a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and frizzy hair tied in a bun. Hi, she said. I'm Dana. I live 2 floors down. We have a book club on Thursdays. Nothing fancy. Just snacks, gossip, and Jane Austen. You interested? I was stunned. People wanted me around? Yes, I said without thinking. I'd love that. Dana grinned. Good. We need someone who knows the difference between Mr. Darcy and an actual gentleman. That Thursday, I sat in a circle of women who laughed, debated, and welcomed me like an old friend. I hadn't realized how much I missed conversation that didn't involve walking on eggshells. Around that time, I started writing again. When I was younger, I used to journal. After Harold died, I stopped. But in that little apartment, with its creaky heater and sunlit mornings, I picked up the pen once more. I wrote about being a mother, about being invisible, about the violence that doesn't leave bruises but steals your voice, and about finding it again. One afternoon, Eleanor visited. She looked better. Her knees had been giving her trouble, but she managed the bus ride just to see my new place. She held my journal in her hands, flipping through a few pages. You need to publish this, she said flatly. People need to read what it means to survive. I laughed. Who would want to read the thoughts of an old woman? Other old women, and the girls they used to be. Her words stayed with me. The next week, I visited the community center and signed up for a writing workshop. It met every Tuesday evening in a church basement, where we sat in folding chairs and read our truths aloud. The group listened, nodded, sometimes cried. One woman came up to me after class and whispered, Your story? It's mine too. My son hasn't spoken to me in 4 years. But you made me want to write him. Just to try. It hit me then. Healing wasn't selfish. Healing was contagious. Months passed. Spring arrived, and the garden below my balcony bloomed into bright tulips and daffodils. I made friends with the maintenance man, Earl, who reminded me of Harold with his dry jokes and quiet strength. I baked cookies for the residents. I laughed more often. Then one afternoon in May, as I was returning from the market, I saw him. Jason. He was standing outside the senior building, holding a small bouquet of Daisy Me favorite. His eyes were tired, his frame thinner than I remembered. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then, quietly, he said, "I don't expect anything. I just wanted to see you. To say thank you for not turning me in. For not ruining me, even though I ruined us." I didn't know what to say. I didn't invite him up. I didn't hug him. But I said, "I'm glad you're trying." His face crumpled. "I'm in therapy. I've been sober 2 months now. And I see the boys every weekend. Rachel's letting me see them supervised, but it's something." He looked at me like a boy again, like the son I once rocked to sleep when he had night terrors. "I never stopped loving you," he said, "but I was too broken to love anyone the right way." Tears threatened, but I held them back. "I know," I said, and that was enough for that day. Later, I sat on the balcony, a journal in my lap, and wrote one word across the page. Begin. I wasn't starting over. I was continuing. There was no fairy tale ending. Jason didn't move in. We didn't pretend the past hadn't happened. But we spoke, now and then. Slowly. Honestly. And when Caleb visited the library each week, he didn't ask why I lived somewhere else. He just hugged me, asked for more stories, and told me about the tooth he lost. Love survives, even after it's bruised. Sometimes it limps, but sometimes it blooms again. And I had decided, finally, fully, joyfully, that I deserved to bloom, too. The summer months brought warmth not just in the air, but in my chest. Healing is a quiet thing, slow and stubborn, like ivy climbing a cracked wall. You don't notice it until suddenly, there's green where grief used to be. I started writing regularly. My journal became pages of essays, short stories, even poetry. Angela helped me connect with a local senior writers collective. They encouraged me to submit my work to a regional magazine that featured stories from underrepresented voices. I never thought I'd hear back. But one afternoon in late June, a letter arrived. It read, "Dear Ms. Lanes, we are thrilled to inform you that your essay, Invisible Doesn't Mean Gone, has been accepted for publication in our September issue. Your words moved us deeply. Thank you for your courage. The editorial team, Hearth and Hollow Journal." I sat in silence, letter trembling in my hands. I wasn't invisible anymore. That same night, Jason called for the first time. He didn't say much, just that he'd read the story after a neighbor showed him the online version. His voice cracked. "I never knew how much you carried," he said. "How much I made you carry." I didn't absolve him, but I thanked him for reading. That was enough for now. In July, I hosted a small dinner at my apartment. Just a few neighbors, Eleanor, Dana from the book club, and Earl from maintenance, who brought over his famous cornbread. We sat around my little dining table, plates piled with roasted chicken and summer squash. And for the first time in years, I felt surrounded by people who chose to be with me. Not out of obligation, not out of blood, but out of genuine affection. Eleanor raised a glass of lemonade. "To Margaret," she said, "our fierce little phoenix, who reminded us that it's never too late to start again." Everyone cheered. I blushed, laughing through tears. After the dishes were cleared, Eleanor stayed behind. She handed me a folder. "What's this?" I asked. "Grant information," she replied. "For older women looking to start nonprofits. I think you should turn that writing group of yours into something bigger." I opened the folder slowly. Inside were brochures, application forms, even scribbled notes in Eleanor's handwriting. "You did all this for me," I whispered. She smirked. "Don't flatter yourself. I just want a free tote bag when you get famous." We laughed, but the idea took root. By August, I had launched the Second Chapter Project, a community initiative for older women survivors of domestic abuse, abandonment, and emotional trauma. With help from Angela, a few volunteers, and a small community grant, we organized weekly writing workshops, open mic nights, and even a podcast where women could tell their stories anonymously. Our tagline was simple: because being forgotten is not the same as being finished. We met in church basements, public libraries, even parks. I heard stories that cracked my heart open and stitched it back together again. One woman, Miriam, had been locked out by her adult son after she was diagnosed with early-stage dementia. Another, Jean, had spent 30 years married to a man who never once called her by her first name. Through writing, they found their voices again. Through community, they found their worth. So did I. In September, I traveled for the first time in years. The magazine that published my essay invited me to speak at their annual writers' event in Asheville, North Carolina. I was terrified. My hands shook as I stood behind the microphone, reading aloud my story to a crowd of strangers. But when I looked up, I saw tears. People were listening. After the reading, a young woman approached Memabe in her late 20s, with pink streaks in her hair and wide, earnest eyes. "My mom went through something like you," she said, "but she never talked about it. I'm going to send her your piece. Maybe it'll help her open up." I hugged her. That moment stayed with me for weeks. One story, just one, can be the spark in someone else's dark. Back home, Caleb kept visiting the library. He was older now, more thoughtful. One day he asked, "Grandma, why don't you live with Dad anymore?" I took a breath. "Because sometimes," I said slowly, "people we love do things that hurt us. And even if we forgive them, we still need space to feel safe again." He nodded, as if that made perfect sense. Then he asked if I had any books about dragons. I gave him 3. Rachel called me that same week. We hadn't spoken since everything fell apart. Her voice was cautious, but polite. "I wanted to thank you," she said, "for helping Jason get help. He's a different man now, and the boys' theory better for it." I didn't expect gratitude, but hearing it reminded me. Change doesn't always come in grand gestures. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it arrives long after the storm. In November, I stood in the community center lobby, looking at a corkboard filled with photos from our writing group. Smiling faces, raised pens, pages covered in ink and pain and triumph. Jason walked in, hesitant but present. "Caleb wanted me to bring this," he said, handing me a card. It was handmade. Crayon hearts, a stick figure of me with gray hair and a big smile. "To the strongest grandma in the world." Jason cleared his throat. He wanted to write, "Thank you for staying alive," but Rachel helped him change it. I smiled. "I like it either way." He shifted uncomfortably. "I don't expect us to fix everything, but if there's any space for something, even just friendship, I'd be grateful." I didn't answer right away. Then I nodded. "Let's take it one letter at a time." He smiled through glassy eyes. As he left, I thought of that night in the kitchen. The blood, the fall, the silence. And now, this moment. Growth isn't always about rising quickly. Sometimes, it's about refusing to stay down. Sometimes, it's about becoming someone even you didn't think you could be. And at 73, I was still becoming.